AK-47 fire echoed across the base. "Get out there," Captain Thorne roared, shoving the woman in the janitor's jumpsuit. "You're the diversion." She was just bait for enemy snipers. Or so he thought. The scent of industrial cleaner and old coffee hung in the humid South Carolina air. For Maya Lincoln, it was the smell of invisibility. At 0500 hours, long before the first drills shattered the morning quiet of Fort Jackson, she was already at work, her mop bucket and cart the only companions in the sprawling corridors of the main training complex. At 30, with mousy brown hair pulled back into a severe bun and eyes that seemed permanently fixed on the linoleum floors, she had perfected the art of being overlooked. Her job was simple: mop, dust, empty trash, repeat. For 18 months, she had been a ghost in green coveralls, a silent witness to the endless cycle of young soldiers arriving full of bravado and leaving with the hardened look of those who'd been tested. The first tremor in her meticulously constructed world came at 0709. Maya was in the armory, carefully wiping down a rack of M4S, the familiar weight and cold steel a strange comfort in her hands. Suddenly, the air vibrated with a sound that didn't belong. Not the controlled, rhythmic pop-pop-pop of a firing range, but the chaotic, full-throated roar of automatic weapons. It was a language she understood too well. The distinct, higher-pitched chatter of Kalashnikovs, not standard-issue American arms. Her head snapped up, her gaze locking on the reinforced window. Outside, she saw them. 6 elite operators, members of the base's quick reaction force, sprinting towards the 8-story live-fire training building known as the Citadel. Leading them was Captain Marcus Thorne, a man carved from granite and arrogance. 6 feet 2 inches, with a jaw that looked like it could crack walnuts and eyes the color of a winter sky. Thorne was a legend in his own mind. His operational record was spotless, but it was a perfection built on the ruthless disregard for anyone he considered beneath him. Maya had seen him berate recruits for the slightest infraction, his voice a lash that cut deeper than any physical punishment. The radio on the armory sergeant's desk crackled to life, the frantic transmissions painting a grim picture. A squad of 16 recruits, fresh-faced kids doing urban warfare drills, had been ambushed. A dozen heavily armed hostiles, emerging from forgotten service tunnels, had seized the Citadel. The voice that came over the captured frequency was chillingly calm, laced with a thick Slavic accent. "This is Dmitry Volkov. We have 16 American soldiers. You have 40 minutes to arrange the release of our brothers from your federal prisons. A new name will be provided every 10 minutes you delay. No negotiations." Maya watched as Thorne's team fanned out, their movements a textbook example of tactical approach. They were professionals, the best the base had to offer. Then, the trap was sprung. Muzzle flashes erupted from concealed positions on the Citadel's lower floors and the surrounding structures. A devastating crossfire ripped through the QRF team. 3 operators went down instantly, their bodies ragdolling onto the manicured lawn. The remaining 3, including Thorne, scrambled for the scant cover offered by a concrete barricade. "Man down. I need a medic." The desperate calls were swallowed by the relentless gunfire. Thorne's perfect record was bleeding out on the grass. His fury and desperation were palpable even from 100 yards away. And then, his frantic eyes scanned the area and locked onto the armory window, right where Maya stood frozen. He had found a solution. He had found someone disposable. The armory door burst inward with a crash that shook the weapon racks. Captain Thorne filled the doorway, his face a mask of primal rage. "You, janitor, on your feet now." Maya instinctively took a step back, her hands rising slightly. "Sir, I'm just cleaning staff. Do I look like I give a damn?" he snarled, closing the distance in 2 long strides. He grabbed her by the arm, his grip like a steel vise. "I need a target. They need a target. You're it." He dragged her towards a locker piled high with tactical gear. "Can you run?" The question was so absurd, so disconnected from reality, that she could only stare at him. "What? It's a simple question. Can you run from point A to point B without tripping over your own goddamn feet?" A slow, Terrified nod was her only reply. Fear was a cold knot in her stomach, but beneath it, something else stirred, a flicker of analytical calm that was utterly out of place. She found herself subconsciously noting the wind, watching a flag on the parade ground whip from left to right. A steady 10-knot crosswind. The thought was automatic, an old reflex from a life she had buried. Thorne shoved a heavy plate carrier into her chest. Put this on. The vest, worth more than her car, felt like it was made of lead. As she fumbled with the straps, her fingers brushed against the embedded comms unit, encrypted channels buzzing with the controlled panic of command staff. Listen to me very carefully, Thorne said, his voice dropping to a low, menacing hiss. Those shooters are dug in. We can't get a clean shot, but if something or someone draws their fire, they'll have to expose their positions. He didn't need to finish. The cold, brutal logic was clear. You want me to be bait, she whispered, the words tasting like ash. I want those 16 kids to go home to their mothers, he shot back, his face inches from hers. Right now, you're the only tool I've got for the job. It's you or them. Make a choice. Her hands trembled as she secured the final buckle. Through the window, the citadel loomed like a concrete tombstone. 8 floors, countless windows. At least 4 active shooters. The open ground between the armory and the nearest cover was a 70-yard stretch of perfectly flat, open kill zone. Master Sergeant Diaz, Thorne's only remaining team member, looked on, his face pale. Captain, she's a civilian. We can't. We have no other options, Sergeant. Thorne cut him off. She runs, they shoot, we spot. It's a tactical necessity. He turned back to Maya, his eyes devoid of any empathy. When I give the signal, you run. Zigzag. Be unpredictable. Make them earn it. And if they don't miss? The question hung unspoken in the air. Thorne's cold expression was the only answer she needed. Acceptable loss. In that tower, a 19-year-old private from Ohio named Sarah Jenkins was on her knees, a gun barrel pressed to her skull. She had joined the army to escape a dead-end town, to see the world. Now, her world had shrunk to the cold steel against her temple and the final, frantic prayers forming on her lips. Maya took a deep breath, the scent of cordite and fear filling her lungs. Thorne pushed her toward the doorway. On my mark, 3, 2. A memory ignited in her mind, a flash of scorching sun and distant mountains. A spotter's voice in her ear. Wind call, 10 knots full value. Range 1,350. Send it. The thunderous crack of a rifle. A target falling. The cheers of her team. Then the screaming. The fire. 1. Go! Thorne roared, shoving her out into the sunlight. Maya burst from the cover of the doorway, not with the clumsy panic of a civilian, but with the explosive power of a trained sprinter. She didn't run straight. Her body, acting on a muscle memory buried under years of denial, took over. She veered hard right, her worn-out work boots digging into the turf. The first shots erupted instantly, a volley of 7.62 millimeters rounds chewing up the concrete where she had been a split second before. The distinctive whip-crack sound of Dragunov sniper rifles echoed across the field. Soviet-era weapons. Professional tools. Shooter, 4th floor, southeast window. Diaz yelled from behind cover, his voice tight with adrenaline. Got another one, 6th floor, center. Maya cut sharply left, her movements not random, but a calculated, serpentine pattern designed to disrupt a sniper's lead time. Her lungs burned, but her breathing fell into a controlled rhythm. A bullet tore through the sleeve of her jumpsuit, the supersonic snap painfully close to her ear. She didn't flinch. Her body knew this lethal dance. She had danced it before in places that didn't appear on maps, in situations that were never meant to be spoken of. The concrete barricade, safety, was 20 yards away when a flicker of movement in her periphery changed everything. It wasn't from the tower. It was from the ground, near the fallen QRF operators. One of them was moving a slow, pain crawl. His rifle, a massive Barrett M107A1, lay a few feet beyond his grasp. What the hell is she doing? Thorne's voice boomed over the comms in her vest, a mix of fury and confusion. Without conscious thought, Maya altered her course, angling towards the wounded soldier. She covered the last 10 yards in a controlled slide, gravel and grass tearing at her coveralls. The rifle was a beast, heavier than she remembered, but her hands found the grip, the bolt handle, the safety, as if they had a mind of their own. A round sparked off the ground inches from her head. The wounded operator, Sergeant Miller, stared at her, his eyes wide with shock and pain. "No, you can't, you don't know how." But she was already moving, dragging the rifle and rolling behind the crumpled body of Humvee, the weapon feeling less like a tool and more like a missing part of herself. Rounds hammered against the vehicle's frame, the impacts shaking her to the bone. Through the high-powered scope, the chaotic world snapped into serene, mathematical clarity. Wind, 10 knots left to right. Range to the highest shooter, 1,280 yards. Angle of inclination, approximately 15 degrees. The calculations flowed through her mind, not as thoughts, but as pure instinct. Her hands, steady and sure, made micro-adjustments to the scope's elevation and windage knobs. "Drop the weapon, civilian." Thorne's voice crackled in her ear. "That is a direct order." She ignored him. Her first target was acquired. 6th floor, center window. The shooter was partially exposed, his attention focused on the barricade where Thorne and Diaz were hiding. She exhaled slowly, her heart rate dropping, finding the sacred pause between beats. The world went silent. The M107A1 erupted with a deafening roar, a concussive blast that kicked up a cloud of dust around her. 1,280 yards away, the terrorist sniper's head vanished in a red mist. His rifle tumbled from the window, clattering onto a balcony below. The comms channels exploded. Jesus Christ! Who the hell fired that shot? Maya was already working the bolt, the heavy clack-clack, a familiar song. She found her second target. 4th floor, southeast. This one was smarter, keeping deep in the shadows of the room. A difficult shot, an impossible shot for most. But she wasn't most people. She held for the concrete window frame, calculated the ricochet angle needed to deflect the .50 caliber round off the interior ceiling and down into her target. She squeezed the trigger. A secondary flash bloomed from within the darkened room. Hit confirmed. 2 down. Diaz breathed over the radio, his voice filled with awe. "Captain, who is this woman?" In a makeshift command center, Colonel Eva Harding stared at the tactical display, her coffee forgotten. 3 minutes ago, she was preparing to make 16 of the worst phone calls of her life. Now, an unknown variable was single-handedly rewriting the rules of engagement. "Give me a drone visual on that shooter's position now," she commanded, her voice sharp. The screen flickered, then zoomed in on the battered Humvee. It showed a lone figure in a janitor's jumpsuit, effortlessly handling a weapon that weighed nearly 30 pounds. The way she held the rifle, the way her body absorbed the recoil, the fluid economy of her movements. It was all wrong for a civilian, and yet terrifyingly familiar. Harding felt a chill crawl up her spine. It was a signature, a ghost from a past she thought was long buried. "Ma'am," her aide asked, noticing the colonel's sudden pallor. "Do you know who that is?" Harding grabbed the Mastercom's handset. "All units, this is Colonel Harding. Stand down. Do not, I repeat, do not engage the friendly shooter at the Humvee. That is a direct order from me." Back on the field, Maya had changed position, crawling to the far side of the vehicle. 3 shooters down. At least one more, plus Volkov himself. But the enemy was adapting. Volkov knew he was facing a professional. Through her scope, she saw the remaining terrorists dragging the recruits into the main observation room on the top floor, forming a human shield. Volkov's voice, now laced with venom, returned to the radio. A very impressive performance. But the game is over. You will watch now as we demonstrate the price of your defiance. A terrorist grabbed the young female recruit, Sarah Jenkins, and dragged her to the window, her terrified sobs audible even over the wind. The executioner placed a pistol to her head. Maya's world shrank to the circle of her scope. Range, 1,350 yards. Wind gusting to 15 knots. The executioner was almost completely obscured by the girl's body. There was maybe a 2-inch gap between the side of Sarah's head and the man's shoulder. A shot that defied physics. Her finger rested on the trigger. Time seemed to warp, stretching into an eternity. In that moment, she wasn't Maya Lincoln, the cleaner. She wasn't even Jessica Hayes, the name on her birth certificate. She was Spectre, and her job was to do the impossible. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. The bullet, a whisper of physics and faith, crossed the distance in just over a second. The executioner's pistol hand exploded, the weapon flying away. He staggered back, screaming, clutching his ruined wrist. Sarah, reacting with the instinct of a trained soldier, dropped to the floor. It was all the window Maya needed. A second shot, fired before the echo of the first had faded, took the terrorist square in the chest, slamming him back into the room. 4 for 4 at over 1,300 yards, Diaz stammered. My God! The Citadel fell silent. Then, the fast-rope team, emboldened by the impossible, descended from helicopters, storming the tower. Within minutes, it was over. Maya gently set the rifle down, her hands finally beginning to shake. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a profound emptiness. She stood up on unsteady legs and began to walk back toward the armory, hoping to melt back into the invisibility she craved. Hold it right there. The voice was pure steel. Colonel Harding strode across the field, flanked by 2 military police officers. Her face was unreadable. Ma'am, I was just... Maya started. Take off your coveralls. The top half. It was an order, not a request. With trembling fingers, Maya unzipped the greasy jumpsuit, letting it fall to her waist. There, on her right shoulder blade, was a tattoo. A coiled desert viper, its fangs bared, ready to strike. Below it, a set of coordinates. Harding stepped closer, her voice a low whisper only Maya could hear. Operation Sandviper. The official report said there were no survivors. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, bored into Maya's. Hello, Spectre. Or should I say, Master Sergeant Jessica Hayes. The crowd of soldiers that had gathered went silent. Captain Thorne pushed his way to the front, his face a canvas of conflicting emotions, shock, shame, and a dawning, horrified understanding. He had used a living legend, a hero whispered about in classified circles, as a human shield. Spectre died in Syria, Colonel, Maya said, her voice flat. I'm just Maya Lincoln. I'm mop floors. Like hell you are, Harding said, her voice hardening again. Master Sergeant Jessica Hayes, you are under arrest for desertion from a classified unit. You have the right to remain silent. As the MPs stepped forward with restraints, Maya felt a strange, paradoxical wave of relief. The running was finally over. The Black Hawk helicopter cut through the sky, its rotors beating a rhythmic path toward Washington, D.C. Maya, Jessica, sat shackled between 2 stone-faced MPs, staring out the window at the patchwork of American landscapes scrolling by. It was a country she had sworn to protect, a country that had declared her a ghost. Captain Thorne had insisted on accompanying them. He sat opposite her, the arrogance stripped from him, replaced by a hollow, haunted look. He hadn't spoken for the first hour, simply staring at the woman he had sent out to die. Syria, he finally said, his voice rough over the engine's roar. What really happened out there? Jessica continued to gaze out the window. Does it matter? The official report was written and signed 3 years ago. It matters to me, he said, his voice cracking slightly. I need to understand who I almost got killed. Colonel Harding, sitting in the co-pilot's seat, turned to face them. The official report states your team was ambushed during Operation Sandviper. 12 operators, Kia. You were the sole survivor, found wandering in the desert, suffering from severe trauma and spouting a fantastical story of betrayal. Fantastical, Jessica repeated, a bitter smile touching her lips. That was the word they used. The helicopter began its descent toward a nondescript government facility in the Virginia countryside, a place that didn't exist on any map. She knew it well. This was where they had debriefed her, where they had politely and systematically dismantled her sanity. "Tell us the truth," Thorne pressed. Jessica finally turned her gaze from the window and looked at him, truly seeing the broken soldier beneath the bravado. Operation Sandviper was supposed to be a simple snatch and grab. She began, her voice low and steady. "Extract a high-value informant from a compound deep in enemy territory. He had intel on a planned chemical attack. 12 of us went in. Ghost protocol." She closed her eyes, the memories vivid and sharp. Everything went too smoothly. The informant was waiting. The guards were exactly where intel said they'd be. It was a textbook operation. That should have been our first clue. The Black Hawk landed, and they were quickly escorted into the sterile, white-walled facility. Men in dark suits waited for them in a conference room, their faces grim. At the head of the table sat Deputy Director Vance of the NSA. He was the man who had personally signed off on the report labeling her delusional. "Sergeant Hayes," Vance said with a predatory smile. "A pleasure to see you again." "It's Lincoln now," she replied coldly. "Spectre died in Syria. You saw to that." "Let's cut the theatrics," Vance said. "What do you know about Black Site 9? The room went quiet. Eva Harding looked shocked. Black Site 9 was a myth, a whisper in the darkest corners of the intelligence community. "I know it's where you took our informant after you let the ambush happen," Jessica said, her voice ringing with conviction. "I know he wasn't Syrian. He was one of yours. Colonel Marcus Webb." Thorne swore under his breath. "The chemical weapons threat was a lie," Jessica continued, her eyes locked on Vance. "The entire operation was a setup. Someone in this room wanted a team of elite operators captured alive. They needed test subjects." Vance's composure finally cracked. "These are treasonous accusations." "They're facts," Jessica countered. "Webb led us into a perfectly orchestrated trap. My team was captured, tortured for weeks. Not for intel. They were running experiments on us, pushing the limits of human endurance, testing new biochemical agents." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing a latticework of thin, precise scars. Techniques and equipment that were purely American. Vance slammed his hand on the table. "You have no proof." "Don't I?" Jessica reached into her mouth, twisting a molar at the back of her jaw. With a soft click, she removed what looked like a tooth. It was a micro-storage device, shielded and encrypted. "It's all here. Audio, video, medical logs. Everything. I documented it all before I escaped." She placed the tooth on the polished table. It sat there, small and insignificant, yet holding the power to burn their world to the ground. 11 good men died in that program. The question is, what are you going to do about it? The moment the device hit the table, the lights went out. A second later, emergency strobes bathed the room in a hellish red glow as alarms blared. Through the armored window, Jessica saw tactical teams swarming the facility's perimeter. Vance grabbed a secure phone. "The facility is compromised," he yelled. "We're under attack." The attackers were professionals. They moved with the fluid lethality of American special forces. The betrayal ran deeper than she could have ever imagined. The conference room door exploded inward, followed by flashbang grenades. But Jessica was already moving. She rolled under the table, snatching a pistol from an MP's holster during the chaos. The first attacker through the door went down with 2 rounds to the chest. The second with 1 to the head. Beside her, Thorne was fighting with a desperate fury, his shots precise and deadly. "They're after the device." Vance screamed, clutching the tooth. "Give it to me," Jessica commanded. "They want me alive. I'm the loose end. You're all expendable. I can buy you time." Vance hesitated for a fraction of a second, then tossed her the drive. Jessica caught it, popped it back in her mouth, and sprinted for the shattered doorway. "Where are you going?" Thorne yelled. To finish this, she called back. She moved through the corridors like a wraith, a ghost in her own hunting ground. She had spent weeks in this facility 3 years ago, memorizing its layout during long, sleepless nights. She led the attackers on a deadly chase, leaving a trail of bodies that guided them to the one place she wanted them, the Central Communications Hub. As the remaining hostiles converged, she was already at a terminal, a hard line plugged into the device. She was uploading everything. to the CIA, the FBI, the DoD, even to a few trusted international partners. No more secrets, no more burials. The door burst open. Standing there, calm and smiling, was Colonel Marcus Webb, the informant from Syria, looking very much alive. "Hello, Jessica," he said pleasantly. "You've been a terrible inconvenience. You son of a bitch. You experimented on your own men. I improved them," Webb corrected. "Created soldiers who could not be broken. A worthy cause, wouldn't you agree? How many men have you killed for the greater good, Spectre?" The upload hit 95%. She just needed a few more seconds. "It's over, Webb." "On the contrary," he said, raising his pistol. "It's just beginning." A single shot cracked from the doorway behind him. Webb spun, his own shot going wide, a look of surprise on his face. Thorne stood there, his rifle smoking. Jessica didn't hesitate. 2 rounds to Webb's chest, and 1 to his head for good measure. Upload complete. 6 months later, Jessica stood before 11 white headstones at Arlington National Cemetery. The families of her team finally had the truth. The Webb scandal had shattered the intelligence community, leading to dozens of arrests and a complete overhaul of black site protocols. Thorne found her there. He'd been cleared, promoted, and had chosen to become an instructor at Fort Jackson. "They're offering you full reinstatement," he said quietly. "A blank check. They want Spectre back." Jessica's eyes drifted to a newer headstone nearby. Private Sarah Jenkins, the young recruit from the Citadel, inspired by her story, had re-enlisted. She was killed in action 2 months ago. "I have a job," Jessica replied, her voice soft. "Someone has to clean the rifles." As Thorne walked away, she noticed a small, unmarked package at the base of Sarah's headstone. Inside was a single tooth drive, identical to her own. The note was simple. Syria was only one program. "They know you're alive. Be ready. A friend." Her phone buzzed. An encrypted, unknown number. She answered. "Spectre," she said. "We need you." A voice replied. "It's happening again." Jessica looked back at the rows of honored dead, then toward the horizon. Some ghosts don't rest. They just wait. Send me the coordinates. The story of Maya Lincoln was over. The story of Spectre was about to begin. The world is full of heroes forced into the shadows, their stories untold. If you've ever witnessed someone reveal an incredible, hidden talent under pressure, share your story in the comments below. Every hero deserves to be recognized. And please, always comment with respect for the sacrifices made by so many. Your support helps us continue to share these powerful tales. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that need to be heard.